Well, thanks again for everybody. This is Dr. Rhonda Farrell with the ASQ Innovation Division, bringing you our August 2024 special guest speaker tonight, Miss LaShira Champion King. And you are in for a treat because she is a consummate innovation specialist with many years examining how to drive out waste, how to apply lean principles, how to drive innovation and embed it in all aspects of her organization, and really takes her background in academia and across many different areas, architecture, facilities management, and applies them through the lens of CM, construction, education, construction management, CM lean, and think about the different aspects. So LaShira is like a diamond, right? She has deep industry knowledge. She has deep innovation knowledge. She has application across multiple focus areas within her organizations. And she is able to bring you this depth of knowledge of standards and application operations in many parts of the organization. And really, you can see that she's done this through the lens of continual innovation, continuous improvement, and really helped create the cultural shifts that really allow for sustainable innovation in organizations. So big round of applause for our wonderful thought leader, Miss LaShira Champion King tonight. Ma'am, I will turn it over to you for you to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that lovely intro. I really appreciate all the kind words. I would say hello tonight, but I think it is actually more appropriate to say sawabona. I've heard that phrase over and over again, and I never knew how much it actually meant and the interaction that generally happens when the Zulu folks say sawabona. And so I'm saying that to you tonight because of the subject that we're going to talk about, some DEI, and how all of that rolls into innovation and how it's really the foundation of innovation and any continual improvement effort at any organization. As Americans, we walk up to each other and we say, "Hey, how's it going? How are you doing?" And we just give some answer that the other person may not be listening to. Generally, we'll say fine, and you may not be fine, but you'll say fine. Or you could say something else, and the person you're speaking with totally did not catch what you just said, nor do some of them care. But when in the Zulu language, when they say sawabona, it means I see you and you exist because I see you. And there's a number of greetings that you can say back, but most of them allude to the fact that I exist because you see me and because you've acknowledged me. And so I think that is so profound for what we're going to talk about tonight. So that is my greeting, my introduction, sawabona, rather than just saying hello. I want you to know that I see you, and I make it a point to see people wherever I go in whatever facet that I'm working in. I make it a point to ensure that people understand that I see you specifically. Just a little bit of background. I heard there is someone that is from, I heard Detroit, I heard Grand Rapids. I want to say hi to all my neighbors that are somewhere in Michigan and even Chicago. I want to say hello to my neighbors. I work for a company called Walbridge. It's formerly called Walbridge Aldinger, and it is headquartered in Detroit. So despite me being from South Florida, I live in Detroit currently, and I have for quite some time now, for about 20 years now. I've lived in Detroit, and I work for a company called Walbridge, which is a construction management firm. This is just a little bit about us and where we're located. We do have multiple locations. That doesn't include Tampa, Charlotte. We have a design group that's in Atlanta, Pittsburgh, And so in some of the places we have a Mexico operation that is just phenomenal. I love just never a shortage of impression coming from the Mexico office and some of the places that we worked. These are some of the rankings and such. Walbridge has been in existence for almost 110 years. So very long time that this company has been in existence, and just has reinvented itself over and over again, and continuously improved for the majority of that 110 years. So the state of the construction industry, I'd like to start off just kind of giving you some background and some context on, how did we arrive at letting DEI be the foundation of our quality lean and, of course, especially our innovation efforts. The state of construction, especially with the skilled trades, suicide is very high in the construction industry amongst the skilled trades. Uh, a lot of that, everybody's not 100% sure, but construction is one of the highest industries. And so there's a big push on mental health. And things that we go through, and especially since the pandemic, and the various changes that have happened over time, mental health has become a bigger thing. And a bigger issue is the lack of connection, not just in the workplace, but people go home to various situations as well. There's also a trade shortage, so that may call for people to have to work excessively hard sometimes. And a lot of that has to do with the culture of construction and being on a construction site. It is said, it has been quoted that 60% of people, apprentices, leave the skilled trades, and it wasn't because they didn't enjoy the work, it's because of the culture on job sites. So there's been a reputation, if you will, suck it up, buttercup reputation in the construction industry that most people, don't tolerate well after a while, despite the fact that they may actually enjoy the work. In my generation, we were told, you had to go get a college education. And so there are some people who had to find out late that, hey, wait a minute, the skilled trade job is a great job to have. And it was really what was for them. Some people are good with their hands, and that's awesome. We absolutely need those people. This includes them. And so this is just the state of construction, and being able to retain the right talent and being able to reach out and see people for who they are. It was a difficult barrier to break through in the construction industry. Again, I brought up the suicide statistic. I know a few people in the industry that aren't here anymore, and we lost them to the mental health crisis as well. And so this is very personal for me, and I'll tell you another story that actually turned this innovation situation on for me big time. And I'm sorry, my slide is not advancing. Uh, so another concept that's really big that you'll hear for those who may or may not be in the construction industry is there's a concept called respect for people. And I think this phrase was coined by the Lean Construction Institute. And it talks about, hey, things aren't just about continuous improvement and getting these incremental changes happening. You have to have the people portion of it too as well for it to be true continual improvement. Once you have true continual improvement and the true respect for people, then you are considered quote unquote lean. Then that's lean construction. But as long as you're just driving numbers and processes, it's not really lean to do that. You have to have the respect for people concept. So that was another concept, and this is a relatively new concept. It has not been along, or it hasn't been this popular for that long. And so I think it's very significant because it embraces some accountability pieces. as well as, let's look at how we treat each other and how we see each other, and the environment that we build around each other, whether it's on the construction site or anywhere else. How do you see your fellow human being? And so, this is another concept that we've embraced with coming against what's going on in the world today with the mental health crisis, and being able to be resilient in a time like a global pandemic. That resilience, this was a game changer for us. And so let's talk a little bit about where we see DEI and how essential it is just to even natural things. So one place we see it automatically is in nature. I believe it was some years ago, I want to say it was like 2015, 2016, that NASA published an article talking about how even the Sahara Desert creates dust storms that travel 6,000 miles over to the Amazon, and it feeds it the necessary minerals that is needed to keep the Amazon going. And I believe like it would normally be very deficient in phosphorus, and we wouldn't have that rainforest if it wasn't for that. And there's other key nutrients and minerals that are fed, but 6,000 miles. So you would think those are two unrelated things, but they absolutely need each other. They need the diversification of each other. One place is very dry and the other place is very wet. And they're 6,000 miles apart, yet they feed off of each other. They use each other. They integrate with each other. Noah's Ark, I like to tell this one because there's a version of this story in most faiths and various cultural backgrounds. Everybody may not have called the guy Noah, and they may have some variation to the story, but there's some story about a flood, and some people had a boat, and they had a boat with a lot of animals on it, and they needed this diversification of these animals. One thing I thought about hearing this story, and most of us have heard this story or some variation of this story over time, and then most of the time in your childhood you heard this story. My thought on this was like, hey, wait a minute. I'm sure other people had boats. So what's the difference between this boat and the boats that everybody else had? And I believe, this is just my own belief, don't shoot the messenger, but I think that it was the diversification that was on the boat, and all the things that were necessary. I believe each of those animals were necessary, and they probably served some sort of function to keep that boat afloat. Now, I wasn't there, obviously. This happened, way, way long ago. But the functionality of having that diversification, I believe that's what caused the ark to rise above the storm. And so that's one of my other points. You can rise above the storm if you know how to diversify properly and embrace every difference in their right place. This is another popular topic that we hear all the time now, talking about gut bacteria. If your gut bacteria is out of whack, then you may come down with an autoimmune disease, anything as common as the common flu, all the way down to autoimmune diseases, cancers. All these various things are dependent on your gut bacteria. In addition to that, you hear, and you can look this up, there are people who are saying, hey, your gut is really your brain. So think about that. Without proper diversification, you can't think properly. Diversification is everywhere you go. And so how did that translate for us? Over time, we've had various systems at Walbridge over the years, everything from simple suggestion box to, we got advanced enough where there's an online platform, and now there's an app. And in this particular case, we refer to it as the Win Station because we're built to be better together. We also host what's called Spark Sessions, and this is where this DEI concept really stands out, because anybody can call to have one facilitated. And this is where we generate a lot of the ideas that would go into that Win Station platform. And anybody can come up with an idea. One of the bigger things that ends up happening is I spend more time getting people to see that they are an innovator, that innovation truly begins with them. So getting them to let their guard down and let them know that this is a safe place. You can absolutely tell your idea. And not only can you tell your idea, even if it's half baked, we're going to help you to develop that idea until it molds into something great. Most people, I can't even say most people, almost everybody that has sat through one of these facilitated sessions, they get addicted to it pretty much. And so I was very popular when I first started doing these, and I still have a few on the schedule that I have to work into the calendar as well, because so many people were surprised at themselves and looking at, man, I just produced this great idea, and they didn't know it. And they would, they'll walk in and say, well, I'm just this, or I'm just that. I work in accounting. I don't work in the field on the construction site. So, I don't know what to do. And, at the end, they have a great usable idea. And as long as it's feasible, one thing that I will commend Walbridge on is they're excellent at, giving you the resources that you need to test the feasibility of something and execute and implement those things. And even if it only applies to one area of our enterprise, we have a usable idea. Most of the ideas we've been able to repeat later on. Even some ideas that we haven't been able to do immediately, they've come back and dug those out and said, hey, those ones we had on reserve, let's bring that back out. We think we can use that now. And so I certainly commend the management team there at Walbridge that they've been great over the years at doing that. So just talking a little bit more about the respect for people and the aspect of diversity. I have some statistics here on the slide that talks about there's a return on investment for that diversity and having those different perspectives in the room. I could just go on and on about seeing things from a different perspective and the value that it has brought to me specifically. I will tell you one recent story. And this was an innovation on a tugger that you transport things around with inside of various plants or manufacturing facilities. Those of you who live in the Michigan area, you know that, Detroit is the Motor City. And so a lot of the accounts that we do hold are automotive or mobility and manufacturing type facilities. And so this particular team member happened to be a janitor, and he was driving these tuggers, moving around various, parts, dunnage, or whatever the situation called for. And there was an issue where there was a pinch point at the hitch. And not only was it dangerous to set up your load on the back of the tugger, but in addition to that, the load could become unstable very easily too. You turn the right corner, and that's a lot of heavy equipment that could go flying and or at least fall off and create other unsafe conditions. And this person created a mechanism that was hooked together that eliminated the pinch point and stopped it from being able to fly off the back. Now, you think years and years, these automotive facilities have been using these things. I've seen, this is a much nicer one than this picture, but I've seen multiple, different ones over the years just being in and out of manufacturing facilities. And, no one's come up with this, but this janitor just had the opportunity, and this problem bothered him enough to the point that he came up with this mechanism. So now it's considered a best practice for his facility. That particular owner that has us contracted there, that particular owner, in addition to that, is showing that off to other facilities. This is a national company showing this off to other facilities, saying this needs to be the standard. And so now, not only is it a best practice for us, it's a best practice that they're iterating. And so that gentleman doesn't know it yet, but we have some plans to honor him with a special prize. We have a recognition program that we give away a nice amount of money. Our illustrious CEO often says it's the only thing in the company that does not have a budget. He says if someone deserves this particular recognition, give it to him. And so that gentleman doesn't know it yet, but he's got some recognition coming from the internal side as well. He's one of our winnovators, and it's just remarkable. But again, he didn't say I'm just the janitor. He had the freedom to say, I want to do something about this. This bothers me. I want to do something about it. And it turned out awesome. Also, looking at equity, one of the other things that would be very important is to remove judgment and shame as to where someone really is. Not only do we want to meet people where they are, and this process in this particular picture is a big picture of that in the construction industry. It's a scheduling accelerator, and it's called the last planner system, where the last planner happens to be the person doing the work, and they're able to tell you what they're able to do from day to day, whether they can move from an area, if materials are behind, because at one point materials were at a shortage too, especially during the pandemic. This is one of the ways that many construction companies were able to accelerate. But a big part of that is equity. You have to meet that person where they are in order to innovate in that fashion and to be lean and to accelerate and to overcome adversity. You have to meet that person where they are without shame. So if they didn't get whatever done in that particular day, you can't shame them. Let's work together to get past it. And so facilitating that way for them to succeed, I think, is very huge, and getting people to grow and to blossom into the innovators that they really are. It's in everybody. They just don't know that it's in them. And so a lot of times we find ourselves, motivating them, saying, hey, keep going with that idea, keep going, keep going. And in the end, like I said, it's very rewarding. And so I told you I would tell you about my why, so you don't make the assumption um, about my why. So most people look at the frame that I came to planet Earth in, and they say, yeah, of course she would make DEI the foundation of all of her programming. But it has nothing to do with me being female. It has nothing to do with me being African American. What happened for us when we started to formalize our DEI program, there were specific things, how we greet each other, how we held meetings, and so on and so forth. And so the pandemic wasn't quite over, and we were still having quite a few meetings online, and we were preparing for this meeting. And it was going to take some time, and the meeting was going to be kind of painful too. And the person running the meeting has a disability, or I should say, had a disability. And we go through all the things. We were starting to learn. Okay, this is how we greet each other. Let's start the meeting in this particular fashion and do this and that. And I'm sitting in the meeting, and I used to cry when I tell this story, but I finally got to where I don't cry telling this story because it's so remarkable. We're meeting, and I'm thinking in my head, like, man, so and so is really doing well. Usually, it takes him a long time to get through things and to get things shown on the screen, but he's doing great. And I'm saying this to myself. I'm on mute and coming off mute and participating as I'm supposed to, and I'm just fascinated at how it was going. And at the end of the meeting, towards the end, he made some comments, and he said, I've never been able to do this well with facilitating a meeting. And he talked about, hey, thanks guys, blah, blah, blah. This meant something, that meant something. And looking at the interaction, when I started to reflect on the interaction over time and how our DEI program was implemented and the changes that I saw in him, it hit me. I was like, this man was literally healed in a meeting, in a work meeting. Who comes to work and gets healed in a work meeting? You go to your doctor's office. Some people, find herbalists. They find, they go to church. They do all these various things. But who does their regular job, goes to a meeting, and the meeting heals you? And when I saw that, I was like, everybody needs this. Everybody needs this. And that's what set me on fire. I was like, I'm putting this is the foundation to everything I'm in charge of. And it's because of that. So, how that shows up is, this meeting that it should have gone like 2.5 hours was like an hour and 40 minutes. So now, not only did we have a great time, the meeting wasn't as painful as we thought it was going to be. Now, in addition to that, I get part of my day back. Wonderful win-win-win situation. And then this guy gets to be healed and be, a better professional and a better everything, because now he's healed and he doesn't have restrictions. And just because my name's LaShira, I researched the specific ailment this guy had for hours, because I just wanted to know that that's what it was. He gave it some credit. He alluded to, hey, this difference in dynamic did this for me, or at least, hey, I did well because of this. And it is actually a known healer for that. There's no cure for it anywhere, but people who have claimed to be been cured from it, all those elements were in there. And so that's what set me on fire with that. And so the equity, we were willing to meet this guy where he was. He needed extra time to run meetings, but in the end, he got healed. And now he doesn't necessarily need any extra time to run the meetings. And so that was just so profound to me, and such a game changer for how I saw DEI programs as a whole, and how we execute that in various organizations. And so the inclusion, this is my favorite quote concerning inclusion. Recognizing that diversity, equity, and inclusion are fundamental to achieving and sustaining excellence throughout an organization. Inclusive excellence requires comprehensive, cohesive, and collaborative alignment of infrastructure, resources, and actions. I think this has just come together beautifully. Again, I talked about with the Win Station, the willingness of the organization to put forth the resources and to give you an executive that will sponsor you through doing these things, and talking it through and making sure it works, putting together proper A3s and teaching them how to do the A3 thinking, to hone in on that innovator. So not only do they do it the one time while I'm in the room facilitating, now they know how to repeat it for themselves too. And some people have told me stories they repeat it at home. They've got their kids doing some of the stuff. So it's great. The other stories I'm going to talk about with that dynamic, these are from early in my career. I was an intern, and some of these things started to happen for me way back then. This particular win, I was an intern, and I'm on a construction site, and part of my responsibilities as the intern was to go out and get daily counts, and then do a daily log that talks about, what the weather was and the conditions and how much we got done in the day and who was there. And we had some carpenters that were behind. And so the carpenter went down to the union hall, and he picked up a group of folks and said, okay, you're going to be coming to this job for X amount of time. So no one on that particular team, that extra team that was coming in, could speak English except the foreman. So the foreman would get the guy set up, and sometimes he was at a various part of the job site, but no one spoke English clearly or fluently except him. And so I go up, these gentlemen are working on the roof, and I go up on the roof and I have my clipboard, And they should have known something was up because I had strawberry shortcake stickers all over everything, especially my hard hat. This is how I kept people from stealing my hard hat, is I put strawberry shortcake stickers all over it and nobody touched it from there. But beforehand, people would steal my hard hat and my clipboard. So once I hit it with all the strawberry shortcake stickers, who she also happens to be my favorite cartoon character, here I am walking around this job site. So most people realize, in their eyes, I'm a kid. And so um, the guys start to panic. I'm up there with this clipboard and they see me counting and they start panicking for some reason. And one guy was able to say, I'm a carpenter. And I'm like, all right, great. And they were so scared. And so, I continued to do this day by day. Well, I'm from South Florida. I can speak a little bit of Spanish. And so I started, when I would walk up, I'd say, Buenos dias. And then their faces lit up when I would say that. And they loved it. And so they started to look for me. And so the one day, the foreman, his name was Jesus, he asked my boss at the time, like, hey, where's that young lady? Where's the young lady? And I'm like, all right, what's going on? And he said, I really want to thank you. He said, you really make my guys feel better. They're nervous about being on the site. Again, we talked about some of the culture on the job sites earlier in this presentation, where, it's not always friendly, suck it up, buttercup, a lot of tough guys. And so, there's a certain environment. And so they were very nervous about being in that environment and not knowing, things were very intimidating for them. And especially with the language barrier, I couldn't say a ton more than Buenos Dias. I can say a little more than that. But that was the extent of it, but it meant so much to them. And in addition to that, these folks that were behind, now they were able to get caught up and accelerated. They weren't performing at the rate that they should have been performing in order to help that other carpenter get his crew caught up. They weren't quite there because they were constantly looking over their shoulders, wondering if they're accepted, wondering how this is going to happen and that. And, they were nervous for just even me, the little, I'm just an intern, I can't do anything to you. But it meant something. And so that gentleman came back to me and said, hey, thanks a lot. That really did something to them. And we were able to get things done that we needed to get done. So it's little things like that. And it's something that I educate our interns that come in every summer to say, hey, don't discount yourself as an intern because, here's ways you could make a difference. This is an example. The second example, also in my internship, this was when I jumped over to the facilities management side of the business, and they sent me out to this huge facility in the middle of a cornfield, and I'm terrified and nervous because it looks like there's nothing there. And then you get to this huge manufacturing facility, and so I'm there a couple days, and my boss at the time says, your summer assignment is going to be to take care of our refrigeration management. We have this software and nothing's in the system, and there's, nothing's right. And this is going to, take up your summer. So go ahead and, we're going to get you back there at the powerhouse. We'll get you introduced. And this is going to be your job. You're going to have to wear hearing protection every day because you work in a powerhouse. Sweet. So I go back there and they sit me down. They said, hey, this is the computer. They showed me the ropes. And I get to work on this thing and I see this place is huge. I want to say it's 3 million square feet is the size of that facility. And so, yeah, tons of equipment, automotive facility too. So tons of equipment, everything has a refrigerant of some sort in it in this facility. Instead of spending 3 months of my internship in doing this, it took me 2 weeks to get the whole thing set up with the maintenance records included. So I went through the file cabinet, got maintenance records. I ended up entering the miscellaneous equipment, so like your vending machines and such, and as well as one of the big chillers like you see in this particular picture. 2 weeks. And so that freed me up to, learn a bunch of other things that I wanted to learn in my education. In addition to that, this was huge for that particular owner. Had the EPA or other regulatory bodies had been, privy to the fact that the refrigeration management records aren't, quite as managed, as a little loosey goosey in how they manage that. That's a pretty penny that that owner could have paid for all those offenses. But 2 weeks it was fixed. They thought it was going to take me the whole summer. 2 weeks it was fixed, and it was all because someone took the time to ask the intern. And in addition to that, that's how they added the miscellaneous pieces and such. In addition to that, I ended up writing, because I had this freer time. I ended up writing a lot of standard work instructions for a lot of that equipment and some various equipment throughout the facility as well that we were responsible for. And there's people still to this day that I can meet, because in a lot of those facilities, it'll have the original author on the sheet. And so they see L Champion. And so when I introduce myself, they're like, "Did you ever work there?" And they're like, or they can see my whole name and they're like, "Hey, you're the person that wrote this." Or I see your name when I enter records into this system, that you're the person that started the original record. And so it has your name still there in some of those systems. And so, taking the time to actually ask the lowly intern, what do you think about this? Or how do you think we could do this better? Was huge for me, and it was really huge for not only my bosses at the time, but even that owner that we had to service. And so some of the final takeaways: if you can liken diversity to something, it's, being invited to the party. Equity: they considered your dietary restrictions and asked, do you have any food allergies and such before you came to the party. Inclusion: you were asked to dance, they listened to you, and they laughed at your funny stories. Remember that everyone is an innovator and they have something to contribute, whether they realize it or not. So please take this charge to help others see their own value and their potential. And remember, greet them with sawabona. Make sure they know that you see them for who they are. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Thank you so much, LaShira. Yes, so let's, as our attendees are entering their questions. So I have a couple questions for you.
Awesome.
The first, LaShira, as you think about attending tonight, might be people whom are new and nascent to innovation and really this undergirding using DEIB principles, all the way to very, we'll just call them experts in the field, right? For those who are nascent and may just be starting out on this integrated model that you've given to us tonight, is there one thing you feel they could do to kind of move the needle the most culturally, right? You kind of talk about this wonderful cultural impact that's occurring and this ripple effect. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's the one thing, move a person can make if they're new and nascent to an organization that could help the most?
I think one of the biggest things too is being able to gain the buy-in of the leaders is one side of it. The other side, it's somewhat easier to get the buy-in of everybody else, and it's just making them feel seen. If you're able to help them see their own idea and to make them feel seen, you'll get folks that will start to advocate and to follow and to see that. And then the way that I've done that over time is inadvertently I've been able to solve issues that really got on people's nerves. I talked about the one gentleman who, it got on his nerves that the tugger didn't work correctly. It annoyed him that he couldn't finish his job. There's other areas and stories that I could tell where I did the thing that took away the piece that annoyed this person and asked them more and more about it. And the more they talked it out and such, it was somewhat therapy for them a little bit. However, we got to a place where it wasn't so painful anymore. And then you just over time built more and more advocates for that. So being able to recognize and also knowing how to celebrate when you do have those wins. Don't just say we fixed the process. Let's celebrate this thing, even if it's in a small way. You don't have to have a big grand party all the time, but just having a way to celebrate those folks. In addition to that, and especially the ones who actually see those innovations through, celebrate it, celebrate it, celebrate it, and it'll empower them and motivate them to want to do it even the more.
Thank you. That is fantastic. I love that. Could you, you talked about the innovation type of focus on everybody can be an innovator, et cetera. Could you share with us perhaps the process that you go through to how do you collect from everyone across the organization? How do you decide? You mentioned spark sessions. If you could flesh that out for us so we could kind of, maybe that helps people who are trying to bolster this innovation culture, get some ideas on how they can kind of lift it and shift it to their part of the organization.
Absolutely. So two sides of that. You have people who they know what the innovation is. They know what their idea is. They know that what they want to try. They may have various technology that they're looking for. They're able to go into the system and they'll start to build out their idea. That person is then responsible for finding an advocate. So they'll go find, even if it's just their buddy in the cubicle next to them or in the next door in the trailer next to them, they find an advocate. They run it by these advocates and say, do you think I'm onto something? Does this sound like something that we can do? That advocate will agree to partner with that person and they're listed as an advocate. What happens is we have a committee, and the committee, when we did this iteration of this, we decided it's all people who can provide resources. So these are not like peer committees of folks that, they may love your idea, but they can't do anything about it. These are all people who can fork over cash, people, time. They're able to do something about your innovation. We'll review them and then a sponsor is assigned. It could be somebody on that committee. It could be another person in the organization that, again, has those resources and time and people and are able to shift things around. And they will sponsor that event for that particular innovation for that particular area. From then, it'll go into development. And then they're able to kind of test out things, go through, if you're familiar with I'm sure everybody here is pretty familiar with PDCA, going through the cycle, A3 thinking. They'll fill out an A3 to help them go through those PDCA cycles and innovate in that way so that they're getting the right players involved. Knowing who is involved in the process or who would need to be involved if it's something new in the process. And once they've got something that's usable and they're able to scale it to what's needed, they're able to, sometimes we can just implement them. Other times they will present to our executive board and they will decide, to what extent we'll use this. Some things are substantially more, expensive or time consuming. And so maybe we only apply that on an as needed basis, or there's others that are very simple things that everybody can do. And so then it's implemented in that way. I'm just hitting a point with this particular system. And you can see my little logo here for the Winnovator. I have a few folks that are, I shared one of them with you that is going to be a Winnovator, but there's a couple others that came up with some scheduling efficiencies and such. We had some folks do some great things with drone flying and how we do that on job sites, especially in areas that we can't go into. A human can walk in, but the drone could do the job. And they they did some efficiencies with that to make that you know, a little more palatable and possible. And so I am going to hold an event. We talked about celebration, you know, and we're going to celebrate these things. I want to celebrate some of the smaller ideas we had. We have an AED in our building on our floor. Well, one floor had one and the other one did not. And someone proposed the idea, hey, you know, we make quite a bit of money here. We can afford a second AED to be on, so we have one on each floor, and that way, if there's an emergency on the floor that didn't have one, you don't have to run upstairs or downstairs. It's right there for you to use. Things that just that as simple as that. You know, seeing those things through that lens of innovation and ideas. That we're going to celebrate. Then there's the other side where we talk about the spark sessions. Usually there's a group like the one I have coming up. There's a specific small group within a department that are like, we want to know how we can make things better and such. And so one giveaway, if you're familiar, and especially in lean construction, there's something called a lean coffee where you generate ideas that you want to talk about, and you put them on post-it notes. You'll vote on what you want to talk about, the top things out of everything that's on the post-it notes. We'll group together the things that are most alike, and then we'll vote on what do we want to talk about first. So whatever got the top votes, we'll put it in order and just go from there. After so much time, they could decide, I'm kind of done talking about that. Let's move to the next thing. Or it's an idea that keeps going and going and going. Or in most of the cases, when I use that particular style of getting the innovations to come out, sometimes they know, they're like, no, save that. We you know, it's not a fully fledged idea just yet. However, no, we're coming back to that. And they'll have 2 or 3 things that they decide they're going to work on, depending on what the resources are and how they're able to scale those things. But I get called back every time. They're like, oh, the ideas were just flowing, and can you come back and do it again? And I think the background, this particular picture, this is a spark session that was out at a job site in a trailer, and you see the group that I have there, but that was one they had quite a bit. I have a picture somewhere of all of the post-it notes that they ended up having. And one of the things I'm also looking forward to when it comes to those spark sessions is I've asked to make an attempt at doing this at the trade level. So going out into the field, not the project managers, not project engineers or folks in the trailer, the folks, the boots on the ground, and getting those innovations from them, and seeing how we can do things faster and better and easier, right there at the where the work is done, you know, doing somewhat of a gimbal walk, if you will. And so those are those 2 facets where they'll end up with a number of ideas, and then, you know, maybe it's applied to an A3, maybe it's applied in sometimes it's a little simpler than that where they don't need an A3, but then we start to apply some of those other pieces in the PDCA cycle to get them to fully think through that idea. And yeah, then it becomes a win station idea, and same routine. They'll have an advocate, they'll get a sponsor assigned, and they develop from there. And you know, make a presentation on, okay, hey, this is how we can use this in our enterprise. So hopefully that answered your question of the various facets on how we get to those ideas and collect them and get them processed through the system and celebrate.
Thank you, LaShira. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is like there's an organic piece, right? There's the idea generator, then there's kind of the co-located advocate and champion, kind or someone to say yes, raise their hand. And then what I'm hearing is once that kind of happens, then it could go, is it workflow? Like, does it go into a system so you all have visibility, or is it kind of does it fly under the radar for a while?
That committee of folks that have the resources and such, we poke those innovators and advocates and champions over time. So usually it's on a monthly basis that they're poked, and it's like, okay, do you need something? How is this going? Were you able to test this piece? And so there's various statuses. it'll start as a review, and that's when we're going to assign them a sponsor. But once it's in the system, it'll go to review, and then in development. Um, and I'm losing parts of them. There's a couple more that we have in there. We have an on reserve. Those are things that we may have to come back to, but again, we've been very good at being able to get back to a lot of those. Most of those have been pretty feasible for how we do that. Sometimes in times past, it was one I dug out from like 10 years ago from an older system that was like, hey, remember this idea?
Yes, this is fantastic.
And it
exactly.
At the time the budget didn't work for it, but now the budget does work for it. So it just depends on what's going on.
Exactly. And right. And then kind of what's exactly what's going on organizationally and as well as fiscally. But I love what you say that, hey, we have this capture mechanism and we're able to examine traction against those, and we're able to kind of have lessons learned, et cetera, and we're able to put them into a parking lot and bring them out later if that happens. So for anyone listening, this is it sounds like they've systemized this and tagged it and created status gates, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a phenomenal overview of what's possible, even if you're going to do that in mean and lean form in your organization. So thank you so much, LaShira. Okay, we have a couple from our people online. Advice to support innovation with organizations or teams with a limited budget.
Yes. So I guess it depends on how the organization is structured. Obviously, that was a thing for us too, as well. It's just some things you can't afford at the moment. Sometimes those items are going to become more process driven wins before you're able to do various if it's a technology type thing. And sometimes those things can be very pricey, and the time just has to be right financially for it. One of the things I would say is just I just gave that example of the lean coffee and having ideas such as that, because those conversations bring out the things that you could do in the moment. Yeah, maybe the technology piece would be better, or would be what we really want, because it will make it way easier. But just bringing those innovators to the table, and those that don't know that they're innovators, keep bringing them to the table, keep engaging, because they still will come up with an idea that's better than where you currently are, and that'll ultimately keep motivating. And again, giving the examples throughout the presentation and how it created those efficiencies. Eventually, if you run that efficient as an organization, then you start to have the financial budget later on to be able to do these things. And so some of my predecessors and such, yeah, there were things that they had to turn away, but over time, it's the processes and those efficiencies over time that made the difference, that got us to where we are today, where it's like, you know what, we do have the money to do this now. Let's try it. Because this is ultimately what's going to keep us going. So keep bringing the players to the table, or get some new players and get their thoughts on it as well, because it doesn't always have to cost a ton of money in order to innovate at all. It may not be the high level, AI or whatever thing that is popular right now. The most popular idea. It doesn't have to be the most expensive thing, but it could still be better than what it is right now.
I love it. Yeah. So we have a comment from John that says, Nicole is the one who raised support innovation with a limited budget. And John comments, brainstorming with multiple functional teams. You had indicated the kind of our slicing and dicing. What can you share with us kind of when you're doing down and across, or maybe up it in a single innovation session or for a certain purpose, LaShira?
So a lot of that, bringing those players to the table, there's no shortage of resources on some of those too. Sometimes you do If you've heard of the 7 hats, where everybody has that different colored hat and they have to do something from this angle, and that, like, one person has to be an antagonist, and it goes on and on. Those pieces of it, I just love, because you always end up with something uh, that you wouldn't have thought of, that you wouldn't have come out with. Even something as simple as, and we all know this as a problem solving resource, just using the 5 whys a lot of times with those types of groups, and getting them to see, ask why multiple times. A lot of times that'll take a lot of the bias out of things too, as well, because they have to deal with the facts head on. And so it'll take that bias. One area, the accounting team may think you're out to spend all the money, whereas, our estimating team is like, listen, we got to get this owner in here because we need this. And if we had this tool, we could do. And so when you're working through those conversations, it's no shortage of tools to work those things across, but giving them a role to start off with is huge. The other part that's kind of huge, and especially when you're dealing with these, different personalities and such, facilitative excellence. There's tons of, not tons, but there's some very good facilitative courses out there. I think it's Strategies is in the name, and I'm losing the name now, but they're out of Atlanta. Was a place that I visited. They do quite a bit, and they do some online ones that aren't terribly expensive too as well, where they talk about facilitative strategies. This also goes into bringing out, getting people to speak up, but as well as getting them to come to good consensuses and agreeing on certain things, or agreeing to live with certain parts, and then you can keep the idea developing from there. So that does help with a lot of the cross-functional type situations, where you're able to kind of bring them all together and get them to sing Kumbaya a little bit.
Okay, well, it seems like our questions have rounded down. Is there any last thing that you'd like to share, LaShira, with our attendees tonight? Any challenge for them, or what can they do to kind of pick up the mantle in this area, LaShira?
I think I stated it before. Remember, Sawabona. Make sure you see people, and remember, saying Sawabona, they exist because you see them, and make sure that they know that, and it makes all the difference in anything that you have to do, but especially when you're trying to bring out the innovator in someone.
Well, thank you so very much again, LaShira. We love your presentation, and we're so grateful for all of the approach, the methodology, the journey that you went on, the journey that you're taking your organization through, the tools, techniques, and everything else. So thank you for all of our attendees tonight. We're so grateful that you were able to attend again in our summer series here. On behalf of our chair, Miss Rebecca Mott, our secretary, Miss Jackie Jolly, our immediate past chair, Mr. Larry Miller, we thank you for your attendance tonight and hope you learned and enjoyed yourself with our phenomenal speaker, Miss LaShira Champion King. And if you're interested in finding more about the Innovation TC team, please reach out to our chair. There's a pipeline survey where we'd love to hear your feedback, or if you're interested in entering into our leadership pipeline. And if you love what you experienced tonight, we have an open call for volunteers, and you could take the survey. This will be heading your way tomorrow morning, along with the recording and our briefing notes. We love that you engage us and support us, and we want to do that right back with you. So you have different resources out on our My ASQ Innovation TC. For those of you that are members, we have the innovation body of knowledge that you can access. ASQE has insights on excellence that is very much integrated with innovation and many aspects of lean enterprise, et cetera. So we invite you to look at the research out on our ASQE site. And if you're not members of ASQ and ASQE, we invite you to join too. Last but not least is our full lineup of going into late summer and the fall. You will have many opportunities to share and engage, drive awareness of innovation, and mostly make your thoughts known to our chair, Miss Rebecca Mott, who will be bringing innovation strategy and a webinar format for you on the 12th. We have our upcoming Innovate for Excellence Summit 2024. That's in the Chicago area, September 26th through 27th through the Chicago section and many of their sponsors. And then on 10/24, we bring you our own Mr. Peter Merrill, our innovation standard creator and extraordinaire, who will be really talking about the journey to 56,001. And then last but not least, we'll Thanksgiving session with Mr. Zubair Anwar, where we're talking about quality innovation professionals in Industry 4.0 and 5.0. We're in the midst of rounding out our winter and into 2025 series for you. So we invite you back for many more sessions with us on innovation. Again, a big thank you to our wonderful speaker, LaShira, tonight, and again to our attendees, and we welcome you back on the 2nd of September for Innovation Strategy with Miss Rebecca Mott. We wish you all a good night, a wonderful weekend, and a safe rest of your summer, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Good night, everyone.